I stood in the kitchen of my own restaurant, holding the heavy cream wedding invitation my mother, Rebecca, had the audacity to send. 3 years ago, she and my sister, Lauren, stole my entire future to pay off a shopping spree, telling me to figure it out because I was the strong one. They thought I had vanished into poverty. They had no idea that the check they were expecting for the catering wasn't coming. Instead, I was about to serve them a cold, hard reality check that would ruin the wedding of the century and expose their greed to everyone they tried to impress. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The silence in the house was usually my favorite part of the day, but that night, it felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. I was 22 years old, sitting at the scratched oak desk in my bedroom, surrounded by a fortress of textbooks and application forms. The glow of my laptop screen illuminated the one thing that had kept me going for 4 grueling years of high school and 4 even harder years of undergraduate studies. The acceptance letter to the master's program in culinary arts at the most prestigious institute on the East Coast. But acceptance wasn't enough. I needed the tuition. I had the spreadsheet open. The fund, I called it. Since I was 16, working illegal shifts, washing dishes at a diner, and later picking up double shifts as a line cook during college, I had deposited every spare cent into a joint account my mother, Rebecca, had set up for me. It was supposed to be safe. It was supposed to be untouchable. There was exactly $42,000 in there, enough for tuition and 6 months of rent. I needed to transfer the deposit by midnight the next day. My finger hovered over the login button for the bank's website. I wanted to see the number one last time, just to soothe the anxiety that lived permanently in my chest. Knock, knock. The sound was soft, hesitant. It wasn't the way my mother usually knocked. Rebecca was a woman of force. She usually entered a room as if she were conquering it. This knock was timid. "Come in," I said, not looking away from the screen. The door creaked open. I turned in my swivel chair to see my mother standing there. She was wearing her nightgown, clutching a mug of tea with both hands, looking smaller than usual. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Hey, Mom," I said, feeling a sudden spike of adrenaline. "Everything okay? Is it Dad's back again?" "No, no," she whispered, stepping into the room and closing the door behind her. She didn't sit on the bed. She stood in the center of the rug, staring at my laptop. You're doing the deposit tonight." "Tomorrow morning," I said, smiling. "Just checking the balance. I can finally breathe, Mom. It's actually happening." Rebecca winced. It was a physical recoil, as if I had slapped her. She took a shaky breath, the steam from her tea swirling around her face. "Claire," she started, her voice trembling, "you know how much we love you. You know how proud we are of how resilient you are." I froze. Resilient. That was the code word. In my family, being called resilient meant you were about to be asked to survive something unfair. It was the compliment they gave me right before they burdened me. "Mom," I said, my voice dropping an octave, "what happened?" "It's Lauren," she said, the words rushing out now. She got into some trouble. Bad trouble, Claire, credit cards, not just one, 5 of them, and a loan shark or someone like that, a predatory lender. They were calling the house. They were going to come here." Lauren, my older sister. The golden child who had pursued a modeling career that mostly involved posting photos of brunch on Instagram and buying designer clothes she couldn't afford. "Okay," I said slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. "So she needs to file for bankruptcy, or get a payment plan. Why are you telling me this right now?" Rebecca looked down at her tea. "We couldn't let that happen. It would ruin her reputation, her fiancé's family. The wedding is coming up eventually. If they knew she was in that much debt, they might call it off. She's been through so much, Claire, the stress. She was having panic attacks." The room began to spin. I stood up, the chair rolling back and hitting the desk with a clatter. "Mom, what did you do?" She looked up, tears finally spilling over. We paid it off. With what? I demanded, though I already knew. The coldness spreading through my veins told me the answer before she did. The account is joint, Claire, she sobbed. I had access. I had to transfer it fast. The interest, the threats, we had to save her. I scrambled to the laptop, my fingers shaking so hard I mistyped my password twic. When I finally logged in, the screen loaded. Available balance, $42.18. $42,000. Gone. Years of burns on my arms, years of missing parties to work Friday nights, years of saving every single dollar while Lauren went to Cabo and bought Louis Vuitton bags. Gone. I stared at the screen. I didn't blink. I couldn't breathe. It's all gone, I whispered. We'll pay you back, Rebecca cried, stepping forward to hug me. I stiffened, my arms glued to my sides. I promise, Claire, Daddy and I, we'll figure it out over time, but we just needed to clear Lauren's slate. She needs a fresh start. My deadline is tomorrow, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I lose my spot if I don't pay. I lose the scholarship. Rebecca pulled me into a tight, suffocating hug. I smelled her lavender lotion, a scent that used to comfort me but now smelled like betrayal. She pressed her cheek against my ear. You'll find another way, she whispered, her voice thick with a twisted kind of faith. You always do. You're the strong one, Claire. Lauren, she breaks easily. But you're a survivor. She pulled back, wiping her eyes, looking at me with an expectant smile, as if waiting for me to comfort her. As if waiting for me to say, "It's okay, Mom, I'll fix it." But something inside me didn't just break. It died. The part of me that craved her approval, the part of me that wanted to be the good daughter, finally withered away. Get out, I said. Claire. Get out of my room, I said, not shouting, but with a tone so final that Rebecca actually took a step back. She nodded, looking wounded. You're upset, I understand. We'll talk in the morning when you've calmed down. She left, closing the door softly. I looked at the screen one last time. $42.18. I didn't cry. The betrayal was too deep for tears. It was a physical amputation. They hadn't just stolen my money, they had stolen my exit strategy. They had looked at my dreams and Lauren's mistakes and decided that Lauren's comfort was worth more than my future. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis of a terminal illness. It was a deliberate execution of my life. But Rebecca was right about one thing. I would find a way, but she was wrong about everything else. I wasn't going to stay and fix this. I wasn't going to be resilient for them anymore. I reached under my bed and pulled out my duffel bag. The house was silent again, but now it felt hostile, like the walls were closing in to crush me. I moved with mechanical precision. I didn't pack everything. I didn't want everything. I wanted only what was mine, truly mine. I packed my knife roll, my Wusthof set that I had bought knife by knife over 3 Christmases. I packed my chef's whites, even though they were stained and worn. I packed 3 pairs of jeans, 5 shirts, and my laptop. I left the photos of the family on the dresser. I left the trinkets Lauren had given me as gifts, usually things she had bought for herself and decided she didn't like. My hands were steady, but my mind was racing. I had to leave before sunrise. If I saw my father, if I saw Lauren, I might actually scream, and screaming wouldn't help me now. Screaming was for people who expected to be heard. I knew now that in this house, I was invisible until they needed something from me. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my banking app on my phone. I transferred the remaining $42.18 into my personal checking account, leaving the joint savings account at exactly $0. It was a petty gesture, perhaps, but I wanted Rebecca to see the zeros. I wanted her to see the void she had created. I checked my email. There was a message from a contact I had made online, a sous chef named Marco in Chicago. We had chatted on a culinary forum months ago. He had mentioned his restaurant was looking for prep cooks. It wasn't a master's degree. It was grunt work. It was minimum wage. It was 2 states away. I typed a quick reply. Is the job still open? I can be there in 2 days. I didn't wait for a response. I couldn't afford to. At 4:00 a.m., I walked down the stairs. The floorboards creaked and I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs. I waited. No sound from my parents' room. They were sleeping soundly. Of course they were. They had solved their problem. Lauren was safe. The debt was gone. Why wouldn't they sleep? The casualty of their decision, me, was just an afterthought, a loose end they assumed would tie itself back up in the morning. I walked into the kitchen. This had been my sanctuary. I ran my hand over the granite countertop where I had practiced my knife cuts for thousands of hours. I looked at the stove where I had perfected my mother's favorite risotto, the one she always bragged about to her friends, taking credit for my cooking. I took a notepad from the counter and wrote a note. I didn't want to write a long, emotional letter. They didn't deserve my emotions. I'm leaving, do not contact me. You chose Laura. And now you have her, Claire. I placed the note on the coffee pot, right where Rebecca would see it first thing in the morning. I walked out the front door and into the cool pre-dawn air. My old Honda Civic was waiting in the driveway. It had 180,000 miles on it and the heater didn't work, but it was mine. I threw the duffel bag in the passenger seat. As I turned the key in the ignition, looking back at the dark house one last time, a thought settled in my mind. It wasn't anger anymore. It was a cold, calculating clarity. They thought that by taking my money, they had trapped me here. They thought I would have to stay, get a local job, and continue being their safety net. They thought I was resilient enough to just absorb this blow and keep smiling. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't just a cook, I was a chef. And a chef knows that when the ingredients are rotten, you don't try to save the dish. You throw it out and start a new fire. I possessed a skill set they could never buy, steal, or transfer to Lauren. I had talent. And talent, unlike money, couldn't be drained from a bank account. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the driveway. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I hit the highway just as the sun began to bleed over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and angry orange. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. It was a reply from Marco. Shift starts at 6 a.m. Tuesday. Don't be late. I drove toward Chicago. I had $42, a tank of gas, and a knife roll. It was terrifying. I was physically shaking, tears finally leaking out of my eyes as the reality of my homelessness set in. But beneath the fear, there was a new sensation. Freedom. They had paid for Lauren's past with my future. Fine, let them have the past. I was going to go build something they couldn't touch. 3 years, that was the timeline I gave myself. I didn't know why, but 3 years felt like the right amount of time to disappear. I would grind. I would work until my fingers bled. And I would make them regret the day they bet on the wrong daughter. Chicago was cold. Colder than I expected. The wind cut through my thin jacket like a paring knife, a constant reminder of how ill-prepared I was. The first 6 months were a blur of exhaustion. I rented a room in a basement apartment that smelled of mildew and cat litter. I slept on a mattress on the floor. I ate family meal at the restaurant and instant noodles at home. I didn't buy clothes. I didn't go out. I worked. Chef Marco was a terror. He was a short, barrel-chested Italian man with scars on his arms and a vocabulary that consisted mostly of insults. He ran Il Forno, a respected but aging Italian steakhouse with an iron fist. "You call this a brunoise?" He shouted at me during my first week, holding up a tiny cube of carrot. "It looks like you chewed it. Do it again." "Yes, chef," I said, taking the bucket of carrots back to my station. I didn't argue, I didn't cry. After what Rebecca had done, a screaming Italian man was nothing. In fact, I liked the screaming. It was honest. Marco was mean, but he wasn't fake. He didn't hug me and tell me he loved me while stealing my livelihood. If I messed up, he told me. If I did well, he grunted and gave me the good cuts of meat to take home. It was a transaction I could understand. At night, lying on my mattress, I would sometimes unlock my phone and look at social media. I had blocked them, but I had a burner account I used just to check. Lauren's life looked exactly the same. Selfies at brunch, photos of new shoes, blessed family first. There was a post from Rebecca on Lauren's birthday, a month after I left. A picture of the two of them holding champagne glasses. The caption read, "So proud of my beautiful daughter Lauren, overcoming so much this year and shining brighter than ever. We love you." No mention of me, no missing our other daughter. It was as if I had been erased. The trouble Lauren had been in, the debt that cost me my degree, was rewritten as her overcoming obstacles. I put the phone down and stared at the ceiling. This was the dynamic it always had been. I remembered being 12. I had won the science fair, first place in the district. I rushed home with my blue ribbon bursting with pride. When I walked in, Rebecca was on the couch, holding Lauren, who was 16 and sobbing because a boy hadn't asked her to prom. "SHH, Claire, not now," Rebecca had hissed when I tried to show her the ribbon. "Your sister is heartbroken. Can't you be sensitive for once?" I had put the ribbon in my drawer and never mentioned it again. I was the utility player, the mechanic. Lauren was the show pony. The show pony gets the apples and the grooming, the mechanic gets the grease and the dark garage. But here, in Marco's kitchen, there were no favorites. There was only the plate. One night, about 8 months in, the sauté chef walked out in the middle of a ruse. He threw his apron at Marco and quit. Tickets were printing like machine gun fire. The kitchen was drowning. Marco looked around, his eyes wild. He looked at me, the prep cook peeling potatoes in the corner. "You," he roared, "can you work a pan?" "Yes, chef," I said. I didn't hesitate. I dropped the peeler and washed my hands. I stepped onto the line. The heat was intense. The noise was deafening. "Order in 2 risotto, 1 veal, 1 scallop." I moved. It was instinct. It was a dance I knew the steps to, even if I hadn't danced it in a while. I didn't just cook, I managed the station. I timed the proteins. I balanced the sauces. I plated with precision. By the end of the night, we had cleared the board. No tickets left. The kitchen was quiet. Marco walked over to my station. He dipped a spoon into the leftover risotto pan, my risotto. He tasted it. He closed his eyes. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. "Where did you learn to balance acid like that?" he asked, his voice quiet. "My grandmother," I lied. "I had taught myself." "You're not a prep cook," Marco grunted. "Tomorrow, you're on the line and buy a better knife. That thing you're using is embarrassing." He walked away, but then stopped and turned back. "What's your name again?" "Claire," I said. "Okay, Claire, don't screw it up." It wasn't a hug. It wasn't, "I love you." But it was the first time in my life someone had given me something because I earned it, not because they wanted to manipulate me. That night, I checked my bank account. I had saved $10,000. I was eating rice and beans, walking to work, and hoarding every penny. I looked at Lauren's Instagram again. She was in Miami, girls trip YOLO. She was spending the money that should have been my tuition on margaritas. Let her have it, I thought. Let her drink every drop. Because when the hangover hits, I won't be there to bring the aspirin. The antagonist wasn't just Lauren. It was the system Rebecca had built. A system where my value was extracted to subsidize Lauren's mediocrity. And now, I was building a new system. I started sketching menu ideas in a notebook. Saffron and sage, that was the name I wanted. Fusion, elevated comfort food. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to win. And I was going to do it so loudly that they would hear it all the way back in the suburbs. 3 years. That's how long it took to go from the prep corner to the cover of Chicago Magazine. My rise wasn't luck. It was a mathematical equation of obsession and labor. I worked the line at Il Forno for a year, then moved to Aura, a Michelin-starred fusion spot. I worked 16-hour days. I didn't date. I didn't make friends outside the industry. I saved 80% of my income. But the turning point came when Marco decided to retire. He was selling Il Forno. He offered it to a restaurant group, but he hated their corporate vibe. I had approached him with a business plan. I had $30,000 saved, nowhere near enough, but I had the plan. I wanted to gut the place, change the name, change the menu. Marco had laughed. "You have no capital, Claire." "I have sweat equity," I said. "And I have your investors, they know me. They like my food better than yours." It was bold, it was rude. Marco loved it. He co-signed the loan. He stayed on as a silent partner. We rebranded. Saffron and Sage opened 6 months later. The first 3 months were terrifying. We bled money. But then, a food critic from the Tribune came in on a rainy Tuesday. She ordered the braised lamb with saffron risotto. The review came out on Sunday. "A revelation," the headline read. "Chef Claire has created a menu that feels like a warm embrace from a lover you thought you'd lost." We were booked out for 3 months by Monday morning. Money started pouring in, real money. I paid off the loan in a year. I bought a condo overlooking the lake. I bought a new car, not a Honda, but an Audi. I was powerful, I was respected. My staff called me chef with reverence. But I never forgot. One afternoon, I was sitting in my office at the restaurant, reviewing the P&L statements. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code made my stomach clench. It was my home area code. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text message popped up. "Hi Claire, it's Aunt Sarah. I know you and your mom aren't talking, but I thought you should know. Lauren is getting married. It's going to be a huge wedding. Your mom is telling everyone you're studying abroad in Europe, and that's why you haven't been around. Just wanted to let you know." Aunt Sarah, Rebecca's sister, the family gossip. I stared at the phone, studying abroad in Europe. Of course, Rebecca couldn't admit I had run away. She couldn't admit she had stolen my money. So she invented a glamorous lie. It fit her narrative. My daughter Claire, the scholar, too busy in Paris to come home. It was pathetic, but Tea was also an opportunity. I sat back in my leather chair. I looked at the Forbes article framed on my wall. 30 under 30, the chef redefining Chicago dining. They didn't know, they had no idea who I was anymore. To them, I was still the doormat. I decided to act. I needed to know the landscape. I hired a private investigator. It cost me $2,000, a drop in the bucket now. "I want to know everything about my sister's financial situation," I told him, "and my parents." The report came back 3 days later. It was grim reading. Lauren hadn't learned a thing. She was drowning in debt again. Another $50,000 in credit cards. And the fiancé, a guy named Chad who worked in sales but had a history of failed startups. But the real kicker was my parents. They had taken out a second mortgage on the house. Why? To pay for the engagement party and the deposits for the wedding. They were leveraging their retirement to fund Lauren's fantasy wedding. They were broke, they were cash poor and credit heavy. And then I saw the budget for the wedding catering. They were looking for a high-end caterer. They wanted the best. A plan formed in my mind. It was cold, it was calculated, and it was perfect. I didn't call them, I waited. I knew Rebecca. If she was desperate for money, and the pie report said she was, she would reach out eventually. She would need a bailout. And she would think enough time had passed that she could manipulate me again. I made sure my contact info was updatable on a few alumni networks, making me easier to find. 2 weeks later, the bait was taken. An email arrived in my professional inbox, not from Rebecca, but from Lauren. Subject: Hey stranger, big news. Hey Claire, OMG, it's been forever. Mom said you're in Europe. That sounds amazing. I'm getting married. Can you believe it? I'd love for you to be there. Also, we have a huge favor to ask. We really need to talk. Mom misses you so much. I smiled. The trap was set. I replied, congratulations. I'm actually back in the States now, doing well. I'd love to hear about the wedding. I didn't mention the restaurant. I didn't mention the money. I just opened the door. Now, I just had to wait for them to walk through it and try to rob me again. The phone call was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. I took it in the private dining room of Saffron and Sage, the glass walls looking out over the busy prep kitchen where my team was chopping, searing, and plating. I put the phone on speaker. "Claire," Rebecca's voice was shrill, overly enthusiastic. "Oh my God, my baby, we've missed you so much. How was Europe?" "It was educational," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Hi, Mom. Hi, Lauren." "Hi, Claire," Lauren chirped. "So, okay, I don't want to make this weird, but we were devastated when you left. Mom cried for months." "I'm sure," I said. "But we're a family," Rebecca interjected quickly. "We forgive and forget, right? That's what families do." Forgive and forget, the mantra of the abuser. "So," I said, cutting to the chase, "Lauren is getting married." "Yes," Lauren squealed. "It's going to be magical. We're doing it at the Botanical Gardens. It's going to be, well, very expensive. But you only get married once, right?" "Hopefully," I said dryly. "Here's the thing," Rebecca said, her tone shifting into that serious, we have a problem voice I knew so well. "We know you've been working, wherever you are. We heard you're doing catering." So they had heard something, but they didn't know the scale. They probably thought I was managing a Chipotle or running a small catering van. "I'm in the food industry, yes," I said. "Well," Lauren said, "we're having trouble with our caterer. They want so much money, Claire, it's ridiculous." And Mom said, "Well, since you're family and you cook." "You want me to cook for the wedding?" I asked. "No, no," Rebecca laughed nervously. "We wouldn't make you work at your sister's wedding. We were hoping. Well, we were hoping you could gift us the catering. Or maybe help cover the cost? As a wedding present. Since you didn't have to pay for college tuition, you must have saved a lot, right?" I nearly dropped my phone. The audacity was breathtaking. "Since you didn't have to pay for college. Because you stole the money." "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice steady, though my hand was gripping the table edge. "You want me to pay for the catering?" "Ideally," Lauren said. "We found this amazing place, Saffron and Sage. Have you heard of it? It's super trendy right now in Chicago. We want them, but they're like $20,000 minimum." I went silent, the room spun. They wanted to hire my restaurant. They had no idea I owned it. The irony was so rich it tasted like foie gras. "You want Saffron and Sage?" I asked slowly. "Yes," Lauren said. "It would make the wedding perfect. If you could, help us book them. Maybe you know someone or just contribute." "I can do better than that," I said. The plan clicked into place instantly. "I can make sure you get a meeting with the owner." "Really?" Rebecca gasped. "You know the owner?" "I know her very well," I said. "I'll set it up. Send me the invitation. I'll handle the rest." "Oh, Claire," Rebecca cried. "I knew it. I knew you'd come through. You're such a good sister. We're so proud of you." "Yeah, thanks, Claire," Lauren added. "Love you." "Love you too," I lied. I hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone. They wanted me to pay for my own restaurant to cater the wedding of the sister, whose debt destroyed my college fund. I walked out of the private room and into the kitchen. I found my general manager, David. "David," I said, "we have a new inquiry for a wedding. The name is Lauren Miller." David pulled up his tablet. "I don't see it yet." "It's coming," I said. "When they call, treat them like VIPs. Send them the platinum package proposal. The most expensive one we have. Spare no expense. Lobster, truffles, wagyu, everything." David looked confused. "Okay, chef, do we have a budget?" "No budget," I said. "Just get them to sign the contract. Tell them the owner has approved a special arrangement for payment due on the day of the event." "Payment on the day?" David frowned. "Claire, we never do that. We take 50% up front." "Trust me," I said, my eyes cold. "I want them to feel like they've won the lottery, until the very last second." I wasn't going to pay for the wedding. I was going to let them think it was paid for. I was going to let them book the venue, invite the guests, and brag about the menu. And then I was going to pull the rug out. The next 2 months were a masterclass in deception. Rebecca and Lauren were ecstatic. David, following my instructions, treated them like royalty. They had tastings, which I authorized to be comped, just to hook them deeper. I watched from the security cameras in my office as Lauren gorged herself on my signature scallops, oblivious to the fact that I was the one who created the recipe. "Oh my God, this is divine," I heard Lauren say on the feed. "Claire really came through. I can't believe she has this kind of pull." "She probably just knows a waiter here," Rebecca scoffed, sipping her wine. "But hey, if she's paying, I don't care." Hearing that confirmed everything. Rebecca didn't respect me. She just saw me as a resource to be exploited. They sent me the official wedding invitation. It was thick, gold-embossed, and tacky. "Request the honor of your presence." Inside, there was a handwritten note from Rebecca. "Can't wait to see you. Also, the caterer said the bill is pending owner approval. You handled the check right." I didn't reply to the note. Instead, I focused on the investigation. I dug deeper into their finances. I found out that to pay for the venue and the dress, a $12,000 Vera Wang, Rebecca had skipped 3 mortgage payments. They were on the brink of foreclosure. They were banking everything on this wedding, hoping that Lauren's new husband, Chad, was rich. But the pie had dug into Chad, too. Chad was broke. He had $40,000 in credit card debt of his own. He was marrying Lauren thinking her family had money. It was a circle of grifters, all trying to scam each other. And I was the bank they were all planning to rob. The wedding was 2 weeks away. Rebecca called me. "Claire, honey," she said, her voice tight. "The venue manager is asking for the final catering confirmation. They need proof of payment to let the caterers into the kitchen on the day. David said the owner is handling it." "Yes," I said. "The owner is personally handling the account. Tell the venue to call Saffron and Sage directly. We'll vouch for it." "Okay, good," she sighed. "You're coming, right? You have to be there. We have a seat for you at the head table." "I wouldn't miss it for the world," I said. "And you're bringing a guest." "No," I said, "just me." "Okay, well, dress nice. Chad's family is very upscale." "I'll wear my best," I promised. I hung up and looked at the magazine on my desk. The issue of Forbes had just arrived. There was a feature on the new Midwest culinary empire. My face was on page 42. A full-page photo of me in my chef's whites, arms crossed, looking powerful. The headline, "Claire Miller, the chef who built an empire from scraps." In the interview, I had been candid. I hadn't named names, but I had said, "I started with nothing. My college fund was taken from me by family who didn't believe in me, so I left and I built this instead." I took a thick envelope. I put a copy of the magazine inside. I also put a printout of the catering invoice, the one that totaled $28,000. Across the invoice, in red ink, I wrote, "Payment declined." I didn't mail it yet. I waited. The tension was eating me alive, but I stuck to the plan. I needed the maximum impact. I needed them to be at the point of no return. The week of the wedding. The rehearsal dinner was actually just drinks at a local bar because they had run out of money. I didn't go. I told them my flight was delayed. The morning of the wedding arrived. I was in Chicago. The wedding was in the suburbs, an hour away. My phone blew up at 10:00 a.m. David called me from the restaurant. "Chef, the mother is here. She's screaming. She says the catering trucks haven't arrived at the venue." "Tell her the payment didn't go through," I said calmly. "I did," David said. "She says you paid it. She demands to speak to the owner." "Put her on the phone," I said, "but tell her you're connecting her to the owner." A moment of silence, then a click. "Hello," Rebecca screamed. "Who is this?" "This is Rebecca Miller. My daughter is getting married in 4 hours. Your trucks aren't here. My daughter Claire paid for this." "Hello, Rebecca," I said. My voice was ice cold. A silence. "Claire," she asked, confused. "Why? Why are you answering the owner's line? Put the owner on." "I am the owner, mothers." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. "What?" she whispered. "I own Saffron and Sage," I said. "I built it, me, the daughter you stole from, the daughter you threw away." You own it?" Her voice was trembling. Okay, wow, that's amazing, so then it's fine, you're the owner, so just send the trucks, we're family." "No," I said. "What do you mean no?" Her voice rose to a shriek. "I mean, the trucks aren't coming," I said. "The invoice is $28,000. It hasn't been paid, and I don't give credit to thieves." "Claire, please," she begged. "The guests will be there in 3 hours, there's no food, you can't do this to your sister." "You did this to me?" I shouted, finally letting the anger break through. "You stole my future, you took my $42,000 and gave it to her. Well, guess what? I'm not paying for her mistakes anymore. I'm not the safety net." "We'll pay you back," she cried. "I promise." "With what?" I asked. "I know about the second mortgage, Mom. I know about Chad's debt. I know you're broke. You were trying to scam me again." "Claire, please, everyone will know." "Exactly," I said. "I sent a package to the venue," I continued. "It should be arriving right about now. It's for Chad's parents. Make sure they open it." "What did you do?" she whispered. "I sent them a copy of my Forbes interview," I said, "and a copy of the police report I should have filed 3 years ago for theft, and the invoice for today." "You're ruining us," she sobbed. "No," I said, "I'm just letting you fall." I hung up. I turned off my phone. I walked out onto the balcony of my condo and looked at the Chicago skyline. My heart was pounding, but for the first time in 3 years, the weight was gone. The catering trucks never left the garage. According to David, who heard it from the venue staff later, the wedding was a disaster. No food, just a cash bar. Chad's parents read the magazine. They read the invoice. They realized the rich family they were marrying into was a fraud. Chad called off the wedding at the reception. He walked out. Lauren had a meltdown in her $12,000 dress, screaming at Rebecca in front of 200 guests. It was the public humiliation I had dreamed of, but standing there on my balcony, I didn't feel gleeful. I just felt done. The fallout was total. Rebecca tried to smear me on Facebook, calling me a vindictive, jealous sister. But I posted the Forbes article on my own page with a simple caption: "Success is the best revenge. I built my table. I choose who sits at it." The comments were overwhelmingly on my side. The internet loves a justice story. Lauren moved back in with my parents. The house went into foreclosure 6 months later. They had to downsize to a small apartment. Lauren had to get a job at a retail store to help pay rent. I never spoke to them again. I didn't need to. A week after the non-wedding, I walked into the kitchen at Saffron and Sage. Chef Marco was sitting at the bar, drinking an espresso. He had heard the whole story from David. He looked at me over his cup. "That was cold, Claire," he grunted. "Was it?" I asked, tying my apron. "Yes," he said. He paused, then a small, crooked smile appeared on his face. It was perfectly seasoned. He tapped the counter. "You're a killer, kid. You're going to own this city." I looked around my restaurant. The polished wood, the gleaming glass, the smell of saffron and roasting garlic. My staff was prepping for dinner service. The phone was ringing with reservations. I had lost my family, yes, but I looked at Marco, at David, at my sous chefs. "I already do," I said. I went to the pass and clapped my hands. "All right, team, service in 10, let's make it perfect." "Yes, chef," they shouted in unison, and that was the only validation I would ever need.